Jose, do you feel alive? You got energy inside you? You good to go?
Yeah, just pounded a coffee right now.
Yeah, I bet you
No,
did.
yeah, no,
I bet you got pounded, right?
I pound.
Yeah.
No Diddy.
All Diddy. All Diddy.
Did he did it?
Did it?
Did
On that
it?
note,
Come with me. Yeah.
welcome back to Not a Strong Startup podcast by filmmakers who talk movies, television, and no Diddy. I'm your host. This is D-rated.
I'm not your host. Putting the R in Ramos.
And I'm your other guy, rated G for great.
Actually, you're
Oh.
Ratchet G for great.
Got him.
You got. Now you got to say it that way the entire episode. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about movies that probably should have been R-rated, right?
And a little
First-
more ratchet.
And a little more. Oh, yes.
All ratchet.
Yeah. All ratchet on that one. But first, we're going to hit you with a current event.
This month we had Monkey Man come out. And I was watching an interview they had, or reading an interview that Dev Patel had, of basically like everything that they had to go through to make this film. And I thought, for those out there, we all watch these movies, we see the final product. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't, but we don't always get a little purview into what's happening to get to that point. And sometimes it's good to kind of look behind the curtain. So I wanted to touch on some of the things that this production went through. For those who have already seen the movie or are going to see it, it might be good to keep in mind when you're watching this. So I got a little list here of things that happened during this. So first of all, the financier for this movie almost dropped out weeks before principal photography. He had to beg him to stay on there. That was the first one. Then they were originally supposed to shoot in India, but because of COVID hit at that time, they couldn't. So then they lost their production designer. They lost their cinematographer. They had to go to this island and pretty much create a bubble, NBA style, with 500 people in a hotel where they couldn't leave, they couldn't come in, they had to stay in there for almost a year on top of that. So just imagine that aspect. They kept having to pivot last minute because they kept losing the locations they prepped for. So last minute they would have to just pivot and do something else real quick, unprepared, to do it.
That sounds like our podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Pivot.
It was not a strong start. The borders closed, so they couldn't bring in many supporting characters and extras. So pretty much everyone was on deck. They had the tailor, the lighting guy, the accountant, the crafts guy. Everyone had to go in front of the camera to fill the bodies that they couldn't get to bring people in. At one point, they started filming on phones and GoPros because their equipment was breaking, and because the borders were closed, they couldn't bring in more equipment into that area. They had to create camera rigs out of like rope and duct tape, and then they had limited tables. So when they would break a table, they would have to stop filming, glue the table back together so they can reuse it for another scene.
Yeah.
So this is, as a whole, what this production went through, and the dedication from Bev and producers and everyone else involved to give that final product that you're seeing in the theater. So, as people who have worked in smaller scale stuff when it comes to it, and we know the headaches that come with it. What are your thoughts on this? Let's start with you, Dan.
So working in independent features, whether even shorts, and anything independently, the gluing back of the tables made me chuckle because that's like
Right?
all too serious. You know what I mean? George, like you hear like hold up, or we have to stop and wait. And it's like that's why when you do like independent projects like this, it takes so much longer because we don't have backups. So having to glue it together just to get it right and do that, like I know the commitment involved with that. I love Dev Patel. I think he's great, and this is a directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm excited to watch it. It seems fun, and the fact that I guess I had to anticipate there may be a few production errors that you're probably going to see, whether it's like consistency things and whatnot. You know, there may be some, I don't know, but it feels a little more like family oriented, I guess, with his production. So I'm on board, man. It'll be fun.
Dev Patel's been in the business for how long? A good chunk of his life, over 20 years now, right? I want to say
Probably,
it feels
probably
safe
about
to
20
say,
years, yeah.
Yeah,
right?
because Slumdog Millionaire is old already.
Even before that, he
2005,
was
I
in
think, but
Skins.
before, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know, so like
Yeah.
he's been in the business since he was a kid. And it's just crazy to hear like something like this. It's like you're saying that like this is grassroots freaking indie style filmmaking that you just don't expect to hear that someone at his level has to go through. But because of those circumstances of COVID and everything, it's so relatable, so more exciting to I want to watch it now. Like I want to see this even more than before, just because of understanding what it's like to go through that. I remember having a situation we were filming something for our show back at FM where we didn't have we had two guys from like a local TV company, you know, who had they brought their cameras, and it's just like, all right, we need more hands on deck. I hopped in there because I had some camera experience, and I had to fucking like jerry rig a thing like up to like the ceiling with like some rope to like pull up and down to get like up and down kind of thing. You know, so it's like, man, I know how that feels. Like I know that struggle right there.
And then like the versatility and the flexibility that you are forced into with it. Like you wouldn't think again with a project of someone who's known, like pretty well known that this would
Yeah.
happen. Things like that where it was just like, all right, go, you finish, say your line, blah, blah, blah. You're out of the scene. Okay, now go grab a mic and hold it up. Oh, go hold the reflector for the lighting. Oh, wait, you're back in the scene. Now go back to acting. And just the fact like where everyone has to be a jack of all trades, all hands on deck. Everyone plays more than one role, more than two roles, more than three roles to make a production happen. Which, like you said, it makes it so much more relatable because anyone who's done anything, even at a small scale, experienced this. So to see, you know, that this is also happening on a grander scale, it shows you like that doesn't change, but that dedication and that persistence got the project done.
Yeah, it's also just like the littlest amount of tools can get a thing done. Like people out here just living your lives out in your apartments and stuff, thinking like, man, I want to be a filmmaker, but I just don't have what it takes. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do, man. Just do it, make it happen.
They have like a lot of editing programs and softwares and apps
Yeah.
now and stuff like that. You can do it. And then especially when you only have when you're doing more independent stuff, you only have like one or two takes sometimes. Like you'll build something and like, okay, that's all we got. Right? This is
Yeah.
it. This is all we have. We got to get it on camera. Otherwise, this is it. Like this is our money shot here. It's fun and it adds more stakes to it. It makes it a
Yeah.
little more pressure, but in a lot of ways it makes it more fun. So that way when you do capture that, it's like, hell yeah, we got it right on. Like that was perfectly the way things align. Like it needed to work out that way. So good for Dev Patel, man.
Yeah. Hey everyone, let's take a moment to talk about where I've been getting these new Not a Strong Start t-shirts from. Head on over to itsnas.threadless.com, the only place where you can get Not a Strong Start merch, whether it's our newly designed mascot or just your favorite movie logo now with some NASS flair. You can rep your NASS love on tee, hoodie, mug, rug, and so much more. So get yours today. Just click on that link below and have yourself a strong start. And not a strong, have a not a strong start, have a start that's strong, but not.
So let's get into our main topic then. So we're going to be talking about movies that probably should have been R-rated, but what helps differentiate that, and for at least to get our listeners to understand that is what's the difference, right? What's the difference between PG-13 movies, R-rated movies, and NC-17?
The main difference is if you're underage, whether you have to sneak in or you're good to just walk in nonchalantly.
Sneak from the back? No, did he?
Uh, Between those, there's actually some gray area between those, but I know some of the things you know is going to be language. It's going to be one. I believe with PG-13, you get like two F words and maybe like four curses overall. So you can have maybe like two fucks and like a shit and then maybe like a bitch or something like that. And they're like, all right, you're at your quota. So we know language is one of them. We know nudity is another one. So with like PG-13, you can probably show for like a few seconds, you could show maybe like some side boob and like
A
some
butt.
ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, show some butt in there. While rated R, you can show more extended shots, do more like simulated like sexual scenes. You can include a little bit more of that within rated R. And then I think violence and drugs are going to be another one. I think with like PG-13, you have to deal more with suggestion and innuendos, while rated R, you're able to show a little bit more as long as you don't take it too far, because then you get into NC-17.
That's where the good movies last. Right there. You want to know the best movies? NC-17. That's what it is. What movies did you guys have that should have been rated R? Right? So ones that they probably maybe had it as PG-13, maybe they had it as PG. Maybe they had us NC-17 that went a little too hard, and you're like, and then take it down a notch. Which ones? George, we can start off with you.
I took this a couple ways because I figured one way to look at it was they actually pushed the limit, and it's like, how did this pass the rating system? And the other way was like, they should have pushed it with the theme that was there, you know.
That's the way I aimed it. Was like they should have made this rated R so it can be better.
Yeah. So there's a couple. So I did, depending on the movie, I try and switch it up. So this first movie is Cool World. Cool World is created by Ralph Bakshi, all right, famously known for things like Fritz the Cat, American Pop. Another good one was like freaking Heavy Traffic. These are R-rated animated films, all right. So he's known for pushing the limits with what you can do with animation and like the storytelling. Somehow this movie became PG-13. How? I have no idea, because there is loads of sexual content, loads of swearing, ton of violence. This is not made for kids whatsoever. I don't even care if you were 15 or 16. You probably shouldn't have been watching this cartoon. This was an adult cartoon, but it just happened to not have human nudity. I think there's probably barely to zero blood in it, and there's probably only a couple of swears. But when you watch this film, it's so adult. Like the whole premise is the main character, who's a cartoon, wants to come into the real world. And how does she do it? She seduces her creator, who is this live action person like us, who created this comic book and cartoon, and she has sex with him.
I hate when that
Gabriel
happens.
Burns.
It's like, oh damn.
Dang it. Why did they draw you so luscious?
But yeah, it's like it always blew my mind. Like I grew up with, I could watch whatever hell I wanted as a kid. It didn't matter. My parents raised me in a way I understood this is not real, we're good. But I knew, like, there was like, I had friends in school who weren't watching that movie. I talked about it, I was like, what's that? I never heard of that. I showed him a picture of it because I was an artist, so I would just draw the pictures like, this girl, you never seen her? No, my parents would never show me that. She's
Wait, were you friends with Mickey? That sounds like Mickey Mouse.
I don't know about this.
Oh,
Not in the House of the
Mouse. Oh, Toodles.
I'm feeling my steamboat get really big.
Oh, God. Steamboat Willie.
Chugga.
Chugga.
That's something. There's loads of drug usage in this thing too. The paraphernalia that gets used in this movie, it's abundant. And there's prostitution. Like there's so much, and I just don't understand. Like, how is this PG-13? That means as long as you had a parent with you and you were 13 years old, you could watch this.
Do you think if they did move it up to rated R, it would have added anything to it? Could it have been better? Or was it good as it was with the limits that they pushed?
I still love it for what it is. You know what I mean? I still gonna go back to every once in a while and I watch. But the reality is, if the sex scene, if she was nude, that pushes it over already. I mean, come on. Imagine if you saw Jessica Rabbit nude. That's what this is. That's what this is supposed to be fulfilling for anyone who grew up like, okay, she's hot. You know, she should have been nude. There should have been really good, like, bloody violence, loads of swearing. Like I grew up watching movies like Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy, where like they're trying to break the limit of how many times you could say the F word on screen. This should have been that. Yeah, you know, especially like I said, this guy made movies like American Pop and stuff like that. It's like there was just boobies popping out everywhere in those movies, you know. So it's like, how did they not do that with this? And It just shows the difference. Tarantino is right. It's like the 70s and like the 80s, 90s, there's a big difference. And this was right at 91, so it's at the cusp of when the 90s are trying to get edgy again with Tarantino films and stuff like that. If only, I think if it came out maybe a couple years later, we could have had something more exciting.
I wouldn't fly now, tell you that much.
No, it wouldn't.
No, man. So I grew up also watching that, so I saw that one as well. That one felt like a lot more of an adult-oriented, obviously, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit type. Like you can tell that's what they were kind of going for. It was the first time I had seen Brad Pitt, I think. I think that was the first movie
early
I saw
Brad Pitt.
him in. Yeah, because I think it was that one, and then Thelma and Louise, right? It was like I don't think I saw Thelma and Louise. I think with him in that, I don't think I had seen it at the time, so I saw that one first. But I agree with you, man. If they were to redo it, you have to go R-rated with it. I could see something straight like on Max, like don't even put it in theaters because it's too out there. Like go extreme with it. And they could have had so Cool World's one of those movies that like I agree with you. I didn't know a lot of people that watched it. If they would have went R-rated and went super edgy with it, I felt like it could have been a cult classic. I don't consider it a cult classic because not enough people talk about it. I don't know people that are obsessed with Cool World. I just know people that are like, hey, I kind of liked it when I was young. That's what I get out of it. Because I kind of liked it too. I didn't love it, but it could be a lot more edgier. And, you had great casting for it. Yeah, it should have been R-rated, man.
The thing, it's at PG-13, but if it's already not for kids, so at that point, if it's not for kids, and even though it's PG-13, parents limiting their kids watching this, so then there's no point in having it a PG-13. You might as well just go all out for adults and have it at that rated R.
Yeah, I agree.
I have The Hunger Games. This is a story about, kids, teenagers and stuff being forced into deadly combat. That's the general premise of it. And to have that concept, this was heavily tamed. That's a very heavy concept. So when you tame that, that removes the stakes of what you're actually seeing there. And for me, it like reduces the value of the story because you don't have those stakes there. And we all know, Dan, you're a huge fan of it. We talked about it before. We have Battle Royale. That is the stakes were there. Like those characters, you're a little more involved with those characters because it was like you really felt they were at risk and you would see them be at risk. So if you're going to introduce this story, not saying, like, hey, let's go through on screen and have a bunch of, young people like perishing like on screen, things like that. But if you're going to do that concept, you can't tame it that much. Everything can't be off screen. Everything just can't be implied because what's the main thing of that story is that concept. That is the main driving force in it. That's why everyone's doing what they're doing, trying to survive. You tame that, you lose that value. So I think that is one, it should have been geared more towards adults than teens. And you don't have to make it overly like gory or anything like that, but up the ante a little bit. And I think that movie could have been way better if they did that.
Yeah, and it was obvious that they took from Battle Royale. I think even the author or somebody like they have referenced it before, so it was clear they took it from that. But it came around the era when they were doing like Twilight, right, which rode on the coattails of Harry Potter. So they're trying to make it more family oriented. But even when you get something like Hunger Games, the concept behind it, I know it was like a YA series, but that's like it's one of those ones where it's like then don't play in that world. If you're not going to do it right, then don't play in that world because you have people that are literally dying. And then to go off, you're almost marginalizing their deaths. So then it doesn't feel as impactful, even though you're trying to set it up like we should care about these characters. So that was one of those ones that I remember reading the books, and of course seeing the movies. It was one of those ones that I kind of liked the way that the story started, like the first one, the second one, and then it kind of started dipping for me because after a while it was like the stakes just felt too low for something that's so big. And they had I get why they made it safe because again they were going for that direction, but it's just then don't play in that world, man. Because that's why I love battle royale so much. That's why I love foreign movies so much because they don't care. Because in America, it's like, well, we don't want to watch kids kill each other. Everywhere outside of America is like, F that. I want to see this teenager kill this other teenager and bite this one in the face. And I'm like, I do too. What do you know? We all got a lot of stuff in common. That's how I felt. So with Battle Royale, I love Battle Royale, and I would love to see an American version of it. I don't think it's gonna change it too much because Battle Royale was
Do
such.
you, Dan?
No, no.
I
Do you
do.
want to see an
No.
American version?
Here's why. Here's why I'm cool with doing it. Okay, is because the Battle Royale version that we saw is very specific to that country, and they did it. I would love to see if they did it correctly an American version of it because it would be very different. It wouldn't feel like a carbon copy because you can't copy what they were doing. It would have to be something different because what we're getting right now, it's bad. Give me something good. And everything I say, I want to see this version of it. The caveat is that it has to be done very well, and it's got to be done by Denis Villeneuve. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The most picturesque kills
I
ever.
know. I'm just kidding. I know.
Just a
But those
huge
shots will be beautiful.
wide shot of just like teenagers.
Not a word was said.
Not,
Not a word was
silence.
said. Yeah.
Just
No,
like blood.
you got a good point about like if you're gonna play in that sandbox, like there's just certain concepts, certain things that you shouldn't try to make family friendly. You have enough content that can be family friendly. You know, that stuff just like saying like, hey, I want to make a deadly serial killer like movie, but I want it to be family friendly. No, don't even touch that. If you want it to be family friendly, you got
Yeah.
plenty of other things.
Mhm. Okay. So here's one that I had that I thought would have been way better if it was R-rated and they really pushed the limits. Sucker Punch. So Sucker Punch was a PG-13 movie, one of my favorite Zack Snyder movies. It's so visually gorgeous to see. You have a pack of these action badass females, which I freaking love action badass females. But you have a collection of them, and there's a lot of gore. There's already some blood in it, but it's the exploitation of females, basically, is what we're seeing. You have a young Oscar Isaac in it, but having Sucker Punch, if you would have pushed it to the limits of R-rated and made it really gory, it could have been so much better. Instead, you played with the PG-13 world where it's like, you know who your target audience is. It's not necessarily 13-year-old boys, and even then, 13-year-old boys are going to sneak into the theater or wait until it comes out, and go watch it then. Like, we're going to watch it. Like, 13-year-old boys are going to watch it anyways. But like, you're not catering to that crowd that's like maybe like a Hunger Games type. So like just go all in. Like don't swim in the kiddie pool. Go all in and just like let's see some gruesomeness. Let's see some eyeballs being ripped out. Like let's see some real gruesomeness because Sucker Punch was really cool, really badass. But to see an R-rated version of that, sort of like what Watchmen kind of did, but you give me something like that, like really gruesome. Yes.
I think that
Yeah.
definitely could have worked for that, especially like those scenes that we see them kind of going into their imagination and creating that world. That was like an escape from the trauma that they were experiencing while in that place. And if you were to take that world and then make it more gruesome, more vicious, I think that would even better represent what they were actually going through, emotionally while they were in that place.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, because like if you look at video games and how they're rated, as long as you're not doing anything bad to humans, you can do kind of whatever. So like a game like Halo is rated like teen, I believe, because you're just killing aliens and you're seeing alien blood. So it's okay.
It's blue blood.
Yeah, so it's like a
Isolation.
lot of the stuff they're fighting in this movie, it's like there's barely any human on human violence. It's usually a creature, machine, like there's a thing. It's a big thing. So it's like go at it. Go balls to the walls. Why are we holding back? Especially since it was like his first creator-owned thing. He's not doing someone else's IP. This is his thing. Let him do his thing, right? Just let him be Zack Snyder, all right? That way Jose doesn't get pissed off again.
Yeah, we don't want Jose to get pissed off. Okay, we want happy Jose. Yeah,
It's just so much potential with the visuals he puts out there.
it really is,
Just,
man.
Yeah.
just
He
get a
really is.
writer.
He really is. He's one of the most gorgeous visual directors. We've talked about that like a lot on this pod, but like he really is, and it's so there.
All right, so these are two films from our childhood. We've raved about these films over and over again, and that is Indiana Jones. We have Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mind-boggling. They both have a scene, just this one scene alone in each of them. It's like, how is this for kids? The melting of a dude from the ark, and then a guy gets his heart ripped out of his chest. Little kids are watching this. These were what, rated PG.
Yeah.
That's just regular parental guidance. That's all.
Yeah.
So that means you could be a 5-year-old child from the 80s. This was the soft age of movies. All right. This is not the 1970s where people are jumping out of cars and we're just killing bitches. No. This is like happy times. Imagine being a 4-year-old child and someone's heart gets ripped out of their chest. How do you explain that to your child? Like, what's the talk about that one right there?
And his demon possession, like his voodoo demon possession, a dude catches on fire. Like, this stuff is bad.
Yeah,
like,
and
people
there is
are being
murder
murdered
because there's like lots of killing of Nazis.
Yeah, absolutely. But they deserve it though.
Yeah, it's
Like,
okay.
They're like, Nazis, we'll let that go.
Yeah,
all right.
but that's explainable. You can explain that. But to have to explain like, oh, that person's just melting because the Holy Spirit in that box just told them what's up. That's all. That's all.
Yeah. It almost makes you wonder if we've gotten too soft almost now, you know? We're like, have we gotten soft more as a society now where it's like, well,
Yes.
this should be R-rated.
Oh, yeah.
But back then it was
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is fine.
Yes, heavily soft.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you couldn't do that in a movie today. There's no way.
No.
Imagine National Treasure. Freaking Nicolas Cage is out there getting stuff, and then he opens up the scroll and that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, we've gotten like full on Charmin these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Wait,
have.
I think I actually do have one that I just thought of right now.
Okay.
That I did in the
Go ahead.
previous episode that should have been rated R. It's an old cartoon called Watership Down. I think we talked about it in one of our episodes where it was like cartoons that should not have been for kids. This thing is gruesome, and you literally have a whole scene where it is completely wiping out an entire like colony of rabbits in probably one of the most terrible ways you can, and it doesn't suggest it. It literally shows you it, but because it's in cartoon form, it didn't
And they're
get
animals.
it. And they're animals, but this
Makes it
thing
worse, doesn't it?
and it's filled with gore. It's filled with gore. You see like pieces getting torn out of like other animals. Like there's no way this should have been for kids. That is a animated movie that should have been rated R.
Yeah. That's still one that I haven't seen, but I remember watching the clip when we originally talked about it. So for kids, sure, adults, I mean, humans affect them, but probably it affects adults more than anything. Kids become so attached to animals. So it's like, hey, here's a little bunny rabbit, and I'll watch him savagely die. Like, that's so bad. Like, it's so traumatizing as a kid seeing that kind of stuff, which is why when we're young, you know, like Lion King and, you know, Charlotte's Web and stuff like that would get us, because it's like they kind of lull you with like falling for these creatures just to murder them in front of you. It's savage. That's so savage, man. Here's one that I had. This movie was rated PG, not even PG-13. Poltergeist.
I almost had that on my list too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Poltergeist is rated PG. It's not that it's just, maybe because it has a little girl in it. It's like there was literal dead corpses that was in that movie that the mother character was swimming in, so that they did it as a way to save costs on production. They had literally dead bodies. You're showing human remains.
Fresh too. They were fresh.
Yes. And you're saying that this is just parental guidance. Like, just make sure, you know, you watch. You have a kid, like you have a clown, which is one of the most scariest like nightmares for a child, and is there pulling the boy in, and it's like it's so savage, man. Like, oh my, you have like demon possession by like to a little girl, and this is just PG rated. Of course, it was right before they started the PG-13 rating, but like still, like so even back then, it was like it must have been one of the ones that kind of like tipped the iceberg a little bit. We're like, okay, we need to create something in the middle, but
Yeah.
I understand it's not nearly enough for R, but like to me, it's more R rated than it is PG, man. PG's like,
Something,
damn.
yeah. You gotta think at that time, like we've talked about Exorcist, how when that came out, that was rated X. I think by the time Poltergeist came out, they already brought it down to an R rating and they had it on VHS. If that's rated R, Poltergeist has to be close to it.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, man.
I was kind of scared a little bit watching that as a kid, just because of the Poltergeist aspect of like things moving on their own. It's like that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I heard something move in the kitchen when I wasn't in there. Was that a poltergeist? Was that?
If I hear that little girl, that little woman's voice going
Oh
through,
my
yes,
God, that
it's
little
okay.
woman.
That's a poltergeist.
Oh,
That's
that's a good one.
So let's stay on this horror PG adventure, because what the hell's up with Gremlins? How the hell was Gremlins rated PG?
They were so cute.
I get it's kind of a Christmas movie and stuff like that. It is a Christmas movie. Who am I kidding? But there's only one cute and cuddly thing in that whole movie. Afterwards, we get all these gremlins. How cool would it have been? Slap an R rating on that thing. And then that theater scene, the gremlins are just eating brains instead of popcorn. Maybe they're chilling inside of some guts. It's like, how is they not going all the way with this? Because they're just tiptoeing over here. We had some gruesome things suggested, but it could have gone so further. And honestly, it's like if I'm dealing with little freaking monsters that are hopping around and killing and doing stuff, you think I'm not throwing the F-bomb every freaking second of my life at that point? All right. It's like I'm gonna be like F F F. And third of all, you don't have Phoebe Cates in this movie after the gloriousness of freaking the
Fast
other
Times at
movie.
Ridgemont High.
I mean, come on, man. Wasting my time.
And you give me some stupid story about Santa getting stuck in the chimney and you don't show the chimneys?
Come on.
We got issues.
I will say this.
That story went nowhere too. They should have replicated it. Maybe the Gremlins did that.
Nothing.
Maybe they're
Yeah.
killing Santa or killing her like someone else's dad in the same way as she's telling the story. Give us that story was pointless. Unless her shirt was off, then it could have made more sense. But I'm just saying.
Even as an 8-year-old.
I will say this. I think if they were to do a reboot at the Gremlins, which it's gonna come at some point,
And not a cartoon.
because everything gets rebooted. If they were to do it again, I think they should kind of treat it like Evil Dead, where the original series kind of ended up being more comedy than horror, and they really leaned into that. Kind of like Gremlins, they kind of leaned into that. But then when they did the remake, they went straight horror, like the original intent was, and that was a really good movie. So I think if they were to reboot it, to make it stand out, if they were to take a more serious tone and make them a little more malicious, a little more threatening, things like consuming brains or things like that, I think it would help it, like the Evil Dead reboot, stand on its own and be good. All right. Well, speaking of gore and violence, my next one that I think should have been rated R, and the fact that that wasn't the first thing that was established on the table when they even thought of the idea of making this movie, Mortal Kombat. Like, what
Yes.
made Mortal Kombat famous in the first place? It was the video game, unlike Street Fighter, that was willing to take it to the next level, ready to increase the violence, to put in the gore, to throw in fatalities. All of that is what made it stand out and pull that limelight away from Street Fighter. I remember in the arcade, you had both of them. More people than not wanted to go to the Mortal Kombat, and then they would go to Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat was too full. That's what it became. So then how are you gonna make a movie about this and completely tame it down? This should have been, no question, rated R, the full gory details of every fatality that you can throw in there. There should be limbs flying, everything. So I feel that was a wasted opportunity. And even with the last one, which, got a little bit more less campy than what the old ones were, even they didn't take it to the limit that
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat should be at. So we still haven't gotten it.
You know what
No,
I was
especially
always waiting for when the first movie came out? Because there was so many little things they got right. There was so many little things like images and stuff. How great would it have been if at one point when Shang Tsung's like starting to really cheat, if maybe there was a thing on the wall and he had to do this combination of sorts, a certain specific kind of combination of ups and downs, and then all of a sudden he was allowed to do, fatalities and stuff like that. And just that's when all of a sudden blood is shown and limbs, like you said, are popping out because now that he's unleashed the code, and Raiden's like, "Oh no, he did the code," you know. I wanted that so bad. Like, I remember thinking, I was like, "It's gonna happen eventually, right? Like eventually, I'm in the theater, like someone's head's gonna pop off eventually, right? Come on, Shang Tsung, you're saying the
Yeah.
words, you're saying finish him, you're saying fatality. Let's do it. Let's do
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. Don't need
You
those
can't.
stupid neck snap with your legs. Come
No,
on.
man, you can't have it where the fatalities in the video game is more gruesome than the movies. And like the biggest thing we had was just like a nut punch. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's I'm like, who are you catering to? Like, we are the kids that watched and played Mortal Kombat because it was so gruesome and violent, and like we fed off of that. Why would you not give us that in the movie? Oh, but the movie is gonna be like, well, that's too much. I can't show you that because it's not pixelated. It's ridiculous, man. It should have been R-rated, and that was the biggest reason why it was pulled back and drawn back was because they just didn't go all out like that. Just embrace it. Just embrace the R-rated. It'd be so much better. It's nicer on this side. just, just,
Yeah.
just come on the side.
Damn
That's
moms of America ruined everything.
Yeah. They really do. So here's one that seemed like such an obvious one, and yet they didn't do that. Alien versus Predator. So I don't like the movies. Alien, R-rated. Predator, R-rated. We're gonna put them together. Now it's a buddy cop movie, and it's just PG-13. Like, why would you downgrade them getting together? You should have had double the kills, double the gruesome, double the blood, double the gore, double the nudity. Like, give
Double mint
us
gum.
Double your pleasure, double your fun. That's the statement of the great mint in double mint gum.
double makeup. Like, give us everything here, man. Like, the fact that you didn't do that, what a giant missed opportunity, and tells us so much how studios got their like grubby little hands on these projects and just completely watered it down. Because that's why when we ended up watching the movie, it's not obvious that we sit back and say, this does not feel like an Alien movie to me. It doesn't even feel like a Predator movie to me. It just feels like a cash grab. Like, it's so obvious. And it starts with a rating. Give us an R-rated.
Well, don't you know, Dan? Two negatives make a positive, right?
It's something that it's going to continue to happen. There's going to be plenty of projects that should be rated R, and they're going to get brought down because the way a lot of these studios look at it is rated R movies in movie theaters restricts the amount of people that can come in and watch it, even though that really isn't going to stop someone that really wants to watch the movie at all. But in their eyes, it restricts, so it's less ticket sales, so it's less money. So they will always sacrifice what's best for the movie and the quality of the movie to try to fit more seats, more people into those seats. So they will take out whatever they can and dim down and reduce whatever it is to bring it to that PG-13 threshold, just so they can say, hey, if we bring it down instead of 17 to 13-year-olds, that's 4 ages there that can fit in the theater without any issues at all. And that's why we're getting these situations, and it's going to continue.
So thank you for watching another episode of Not a Strong Start. This podcast is suitable for all ages, but we prefer 13 and up. You can like, subscribe, comment, and share on our YouTube channel, Not a Strong Start. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Not a Strong Start. I'm your host. This is D-Rated. You can follow me at King_Sangre.
I'm not your host, putting the R in Ramos. And you can find me at This Is Me, the Hombre on Instagram.
And I'm your other guy, Ratred G for Grats. You can follow me at Nicolopolis.
We should have done the entire episode in those accents. I love it.
I need everything rated R, please.